my confirmation friends. It is I, Sawyer. I hope you're doing well. How do you like this new recording space? Okay, I kind of feel a little professional now. We got this nice little recording space set up at church, which is super nice for doing stuff like this. So I'm kind of excited about it. I think it's kind of cool. And I hope that it maybe helps the quality of this video be a little bit better so it's easier for you to follow along and pay attention and whatnot. So anyways, thank you for being here. We are cruising through our 10 Commandments as always. Not as always. We won't be doing this forever. We're almost done. We're on number 8. I know it feels like we've been talking about these for a while, but we're close. We're close to being done. And every single week, I've just been so glad that to be reminded of the commandments we've looked at, and then also the gospel that goes along with them of like, man, this is what Jesus commands of me. This is what God, how he desires me to live. This is what it looks like to live a God-honoring life, a righteous life. But clearly, I am not these things. Clearly, I have broken all of these different commands and I have sinned time and time again. And yet, God loves me. And even though I don't listen to him perfectly, he loves me perfectly. And he's willing to send his son Jesus to die on the cross in my place and to take my punishment. And when I just think about these commands, it points me to that. And I'm just thankful. I'm thankful for Jesus. And so anyways, I hope that you've been reminded of who Jesus is. And let's never grow old of that. Let's never outgrow the message of the gospel and the message of Jesus, because we need it every single day. All right, the cross of Christ never gets old. We never mature past talking about Jesus in our faith, because it's what our faith is built on. And so that has been good news for me since we've been talking about these 10 commands, and I hope that it's been good news for you too. So today's command, the 8th command, is found in Exodus 20, as always, verse 16, and it says, "You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor." Now, false testimony, we might be kind of thinking, okay, what does this mean? Let's kind of break it down. False means not true, right? That is false, not true. True or false on your tests in school, right? Testimony is like a story. When somebody tells a story. So for instance, in court, a witness might tell a testimony of what they saw or what they experienced. And we call that a testimony. They're telling their story. So it says, you shall not give false testimony. You shall not tell untrue stories. Also known as, you shall not lie. We're going to kind of dive into this a little bit because, man, lying, I feel like, is a super common sin. I think that if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of us potentially kind of lie on almost a daily basis. And if not that, we at least see it every single day. People telling lies, whether in school or in the media. And we're just constantly bombarded with statements that are maybe true or maybe not true. And it's difficult to discern what's true and what's not true, especially these days. So this is a really important command to talk about. And we're going to kind of look at this green box, if you have your sheet out with you, that kind of dives into what are all the components of this command. And what it says is, this means that we should love and honor God so that we do not misrepresent, betray, lie about, or slander our neighbor, but instead, remember how there's always a don't do this, and instead do this, but instead we should defend our neighbor, we should speak well of them, and we should say the kindest things we can about all that they do. Wow. That is just takes it to a whole nother level, okay? I love how it's not just don't lie, tell the truth. It's don't lie or do these other things, and instead speak well of people. Say the kindest things you can about people. Speak well, defend your neighbor with your words and by speaking truth. That's pretty cool. We're going to dive into a little bit more of what is actually commanded, okay? The way that we're going to split this lesson is kind of what is forbidden and then what is commanded, okay? What's the don't do this and what are the do these? I don't know if that was grammatically correct, but we're going to roll with it. So, what is forbidden? Misrepresentation. And what misrepresentation it means is basically lying or withholding the truth, okay? So sometimes you're like, I didn't lie, I just didn't tell the truth, right? You asked me and I didn't give you the answer that you were looking for. It's all the same. It's misrepresenting what is true. And that's just not what we're called to. We're called to something greater than that. Betrayal. Betrayal means disloyalty. So you're disloyal to your neighbor or your friend, your family, whoever in your life. Disloyalty looks like promising one thing and then doing another. Right? Yes, I promise I'll do the dishes. Not, right? I promise I'll clean my room. Not, right? We do this. We kind of betray people's trust when we say something and we do something else. And those are maybe kind of simple, silly, daily examples. But it can also look like, man, have you ever felt betrayed by a friend? Like you thought that they were going to do something for you. You thought that they said that they would always be there for you and that they would stand up for you. And then they get the opportunity and they don't. That hurts, right? When we betray. And so betrayal fits into this category of not giving false testimony, not saying you're going to do something and then doing something else. This one I think is super important, discounting, okay? I used to work at Inspiration Point, and we would always say to our campers at the beginning of the week, hey, camp is a place where we operate by this rule, no discounting. And what this kind of means is, you know how when you go to the store and you're walking through the aisle and you're looking at how much things cost and you see that some things have a discount on them, okay? They're cheaper than what they normally are. Their value or their price has been lowered. Okay, in a store, that's an awesome thing. So you're like, ooh, this is a good deal, right? I'm going to get the expensive cereal today because it's on sale. And you're super excited about it because it's been discounted. Well, we don't want to discount people because when we look at people as God looks at people, we know that they're children of God and that they're loved by Him and they're cherished by Him. So when we discount them by saying something rude or mean or just kind of like, saying something hateful or whatever it is, when we insult people, we are lowering their value. We are discounting them. Okay? Things are discounted, not people. We don't discount people because we know that everyone is so valuable in God's eyes. And who are we to lower their value by saying rude or harsh comments to them? Okay, I went to school for education to be a teacher. And when I was in my last semester of school and I was student teaching with like 4th and 5th graders, so a little younger than all of you. But I noticed something. These kids at this specific school anyways, I don't know if it's similar at your school, what defined being cool to them was how well you could roast somebody. Like if you could roast somebody really, really well and have just like the best comebacks ever and really just like lower someone's value with like a snarky comment, then you were cool. Everybody looked up to the kids that were really good at roasting each other. And that just broke my heart of like, this is what you're valuing? This is what makes you cool, is how mean you can be to somebody? And that's just so against what God is calling us to. He's not calling us to discount people and to insult people and to roast people. But He's calling us to something better, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. The next thing that is forbidden here is gossip. All right, sharing private information with those who are not part of the problem or part of the solution. Right? So just going and just kind of like sharing, oh, did you hear what happened to this person? Do you hear what this person said? Do you hear what's going on over here? To somebody who's not even involved in the situation, and they can't help in any way, and they're not part of the problem, and it's just, it's not right. It's not right to go and gossip about other people to someone that can't help. This also just looks like speaking negatively about somebody behind their back. Right? You maybe have heard, like, if you wouldn't say it to their face, don't say it to anybody else, because who are we to just like speak negatively and lower someone's image and someone else's, how people view that person? Who are we to go and kind of like ruin that for them and have other people start thinking, oh yeah, maybe that person's not a good person because of what Sawyer said about them? Who am I to do that? We're not called to gossip. We're not called to share private information with people that aren't involved, or to speak negatively about people behind their back. And I would give you a challenge. If you hear any of these happening around you, maybe stand up for somebody and put a stop to it and say, hey, this is gossip and it's not right. It's mean. Hey, this is discounting and that person is valuable and it's not right. Maybe that's a little bit of courage, but maybe that would be exactly what would be called for in that situation. So in the middle of the sheet, you'll see a verse, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it talks about what we are to do with our mouths, with our voices. And you'll see on the right-hand column that there's a lot more there too. And I'm not going to read all these verses, but I encourage you to look these up and underline them and highlight them after this lesson, or maybe in small groups or later tonight when you go home. Look this up and just kind of think about it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. See what the Bible has to say about it. So what is commanded? If we're called to not misrepresent or betray or discount or gossip, what are we called to instead? Well, the first is we're to use our voices to praise God. Think about it. He created us. He gave us our voices. What for? Well, to bring him glory, to tell people about him, to shout how good God is, to sing praises unto him. We are called to use our voices to uplift one another, to encourage each other, and to be a friend to people. To encourage. We're called to use our voices to stand up for people when they're being hurt, just like we talked about it a minute ago. If someone's being gossiped about or being hurt or discounted, we're called to use our voices to stand up for them. We are called to use our voices to spread kindness. Remember how earlier we said we're called to say the kindest things we can about all these people, about our neighbors. We're called to say the kindest things we can. That's how Jesus calls us to use our voices that he has given us. We're to use our voices to speak truth. To speak truth, to not lie, to not gossip, to not discount, but to speak truth. We're called to use our voices to promote peace. Wow. That's a big one in today's culture. We don't see that very often. When I turn on the news or when I turn on social media, what I see is a lot of people using their voice to create tension and to create distrust. As Christians, we are called to use our voices to promote peace. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. Look it up, 1 Corinthians. And lastly, we are called to use our voices to preach the gospel. All right? The good news of Jesus. We are called, God gave us these voices. He breathed life into us so that we could speak and so that we could share with the world his goodness. And that's what we are called to. I just think, imagine for a second what the world would be like if people did all of these things. Right now, I feel like it's so hard to decipher what's true and what's not true. You know, when I listen to my friends or when I listen to the news or when I read an article, I'm like, what is true and what's not true? This year has been a tough year for discerning what's true. But man, what if, as Christ followers, as Christians, we led by example in this way of speaking the truth, of spreading kindness, of standing up for others, of uplifting and encouraging and promoting peace. Wow. That would be something that would speak volumes to people about who God is. That would be a very good representation of what God does for us, is if we as Christ followers were like, we're going to use our voices to do these things as opposed to all of these kind of evil things. I want you to look at this picture at the bottom of your worksheet here. If you can't tell what it is a ship, all right, that is being steered by the rudder, okay? So which is kind of like this basically, if you don't know a lot about ships, the rudder is actually not that big in comparison to the ship, but it is able to steer the ship any way that the captain wants to bring it. By moving the udder, it can go this way or it can go this way, and it's not even really big. I mean, look at that ship, it's huge, but the little udder is really not that big. And this is what James, the book of James, says about this. He says, or take ships as an example. Although they are large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. And what James is referring to here is our tongue. Our tongue is not a very big muscle. In comparison to the rest of us, it is not very big, but what it does do is it allows us to speak. And our tongues can bring us into some places where we wish that we had never gone. Have you ever said something and right away you were like, ooh, I wish I could take that back? All right? That's what our tongue does. Even though it's small, it steers us. It steers our conversations. It steers a lot of times our relationships. And so he goes on to say is that we need to learn how to tame our tongue so that it's not going wherever, whatever comes to mind, we're just spewing out, because there's danger in that. But we're called to use our tongue to promote peace and to keep us on track. And so that is something to think about. You can turn your sheet over if you have it in front of you. And what you'll see is this good news right here that says God always keeps his promises. And that is the gospel. When we see in this world lying and misrepresentation, all right, that is not who God is. God always keeps his word. When you read the Bible, you will see promise after promise of what God has made to you. He'll never leave you. He will always love you. There's nothing that you can do that would stop him from loving you. All these promises. That there is forgiveness for those who sin. All these promises, and God always keeps his promises. And so when you don't know who to trust or what's the truth and what's not the truth, you can go to God and you can see that in his word there is truth. All right? The Bible is true and God's promises are true, and he always keeps them. And that is the good news that I want to stop on tonight and just kind of meditate and think about, like, yes, God is good. His word is true, and he keeps his promises, and I can hold on to that and have hope in that. So thank you for listening. I hope that this maybe answered some questions and gave you a good idea of like what this command is all about. And I wish you the best as you talk about this with your family or with your small group or whoever. And I'll be praying for you this next week as you think about how can I use my tongue and my voice to promote peace in this world. And so I hope you guys are doing well. Can't wait to be with you someday soon.